Again, I'd like to welcome you to today's TechNet Webcast. This is Introduction to SQL Server 2005 Reporting Services. It's my pleasure to introduce today's TechNet presenter. We have John Weston here. So John, I'm going to hand the floor on over to you.
Great. Thanks, Janet. And good afternoon, everyone, or for those of you on the West Coast, good morning, and welcome to today's webcast. As you can see here on this first slide, my email is jweston@microsoft.com. I also have a technical blog at blogs.technet.com/jweston. And on that blog, one of the things that I try to post up there, besides some great technical tidbits, is information about these webcasts that I do. As Janet mentioned, you have a way to enter in a question, and the folks behind the scenes or myself at the end will go through and answer those questions for you. And a lot of times people love to look at the questions that other people have asked on these webcasts. I will post that Q&A log up to my blog, hopefully by the end of this week. So today we're going to be talking about SQL Server 2005, and specifically we're going to take a look at reporting services. This is a level 200 course, and this is an introduction. In an hour I can cover everything about reporting services, but we're going to dive in and cover as much as we can. The first thing we're going to take a look at SQL Server's Business Intelligence, or BI. We'll take a look at what is SQL Server Reporting Services and all the components that make up SQL Server Reporting Services. And then finally, the report life cycle. I promise not too many slides. The majority of this hour we'll spend in actually doing demos and looking at the product. Background information. This is, again, a level 200 course, so some familiar with the SQL Server databases. If you have any knowledge about analysis services, cubes, OLAP cubes, or .NET, may be helpful, along with previous versions of reporting services in SQL. So our agenda for today is we're going to first talk about what is SQL Server Reporting Services. We'll then dive into creating and publishing reports, and then finally delivering and managing reports, depending upon how much time we have allowed towards the end. I do want to leave a few minutes at the end for a question and answer period, but we'll work with it from there and see how much of the demos we can get into. So let's dive right into it, not wasting any time. What is SQL Server Reporting Services? This is a server-side or server-based reporting platform that you can use to create and manage tabular, matrix, graphical, and free-form reports that can contain data from relational databases or multi-dimensional data sources. This means the data doesn't necessarily have to come from SQL Server. The reports you create can then be viewed and managed over the web interface. The report service is the main component of reporting services. It's implemented both as a web service and a Windows service. As a web service, it can be used for processing and rendering reports. The Windows service provides initialization, scheduling, and delivering services, as well as server maintenance. Through the subcomponents, the report server processes report requests and makes reports available for on-demand access or scheduled distribution. Report server subcomponents include processors or extensions, and the hub of this is the report server. The processors support the integrity of the reporting system and cannot be modified or extended. Extensions are also processors, but the performance a very specific function. On top of that, we've got the web service that exposes the programming interface. Then we have client applications that can use this application programming interface to access report services. These services work together to constitute a single report server instance, and out-of-the-box integration exists within various Microsoft products. As you can see here, we work with the browser, Office, and well as custom applications. We then, as a stateless server that supports all properties, objects, and metadata in the SQL Server reporting database. So all the reports that we create, the information about those reports, are actually going to be stored in a database inside of SQL Server. Security is connected to both NT platform as well as password, and we can also offer custom security preferences inside of our settings. Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, SQL Server Reporting Services are not just on SQL Server database. It can be on other database formats, even a custom file format. You can include things like flat files, not just SQL Server data. The output of the reports, various different formats are supported. They're initially displayed in an HTML format, but as you render the report, you can redisplay the format in different formats such as Excel and PDF. And some of our demonstrations will export them out to Excel, and you see how they work inside of Excel. And then finally, delivery targets. There are two ways to access and deliver reports. Many delivery targets are supported. Subscription-based access automatically generates and delivers reports to a destination. You can deliver reports to an email inbox or a file share. On-demand access allows users to select reports from a report viewing tool such as Report Manager, Microsoft SharePoint web part, or a browser. We'll go through and demonstrate those here in just a few minutes. Lots of different tools not depicted here in this slide for configuring and managing reports, such as Report Builder, Report Designer, as well as the Report Configuration Service Utility and more. You'll learn more about these within our next section. So what's new? What's new in SQL Server 2005 over the previous version in SQL 2000? These are all improvements based upon customer feedback. These include enhancements to such things as Report Designer, processing, interactivity, direct client printing, column sorting, multi-value parameters, custom report items, and improved expression editor, as well as a new designer. Integration allows us to be able to extend SQL Server with the Query Designer supporting analysis services, analysis and integration services, data sources, report management through SQL Server Management Studio, as well as the new SharePoint web parts, which we'll show in a demonstration here in just a minute. We have integration for developers as well. We'll demonstrate Visual Studio 2005 and standard editions of Visual Studio 2005 and above. Now include reporting service functionality to enable developers to integrate local or remote reports. You also can use ADO.NET data sets as a data source from within Visual Studio. And finally, the end user experience. It extends the reach with Report Builder, which is a new ad hoc reporting tool, which we'll demonstrate here in just a few minutes. It enables business users to create their own reports and explore corporate data. This Report Builder incorporates a user-friendly business query model that enables users to build reports without having deep technical understanding of the underlying data sources, or for that matter, the underlying data structures. All right, so let's take a look at our first demonstration. We're going to start off from the user's perspective. We're going to take a tour of the new features of SQL Server 2005, including the different types of reports that we can do from the end user perspective. We go over to my development environment here that I've got. I'm running virtual PC, so on my laptop here. So I am running all this from a laptop. I don't have a big SQL Server backend behind the scenes here. So this is all being run from a laptop. From my laptop, I'm running virtual PC, and on that, I've created an environment, as you see here. This is Windows 2003 that I've virtualized inside of my laptop, and I've set it up and done some configuration for it. The first thing I want to do is open up Report Manager. This is a web-based interface, as you can see here, to show me the interaction with reporting services. This is also known as the SQL Server Reporting Services homepage. Let's take a look at some of the sample data. As you all know, with all versions of SQL Server now, we send out AdventureWorks as our sample database. And so all the demonstrations that I will do today will be based upon the AdventureWorks sample database. Now I will do some of them based upon the OLAP cubes, and so I am using the Adventure DataWorks OLAP cube to run some of these reports. So here I've got a list of the sample reports that have been created for me. These are the sample ones that come with SQL Server 2005, and I'm going to click on the product line sales here. So I'm just running this off the local server as well as the local SharePoint services that are also installed in this machine. This will take just a minute for it to open up this report. Here we go. So notice some of the features here. I've got a view, properties, histories, and I can subscribe to this report, and I can manage my own subscriptions. But inside this individual report that I've got here, I've got a navigation bar, which we'll come back to here in a minute, but it's automatically run a default version of the report for me. So here's the AdventureWorks cycles. It's our fake bicycle company here. And this report shows top employees, top stores, done some great graphing for me of the data as I want to work through it. So let me just show you some of the features. One of the things, because this is based on an OLAP cube, I can drill down and see individual data. If I look at Jillian Carson here and double click on that, this should open up another report for us. So this is going to go inside of our sample report here. and drill down and open up for us the sales report for that individual salesperson. Now this will take just a couple of minutes for this to run. This isn't SQL Server. This hasn't even hit the SQL Server yet. What it's doing at this point is there. Now you can see it's going to hit the SQL Server, but it's gone out and done the web hosting, then connected to the SQL Server, run the report. And so now I see the detailed information on Jillian Carson, year sales comparison by month. So you can see how she's done on a monthly basis. December sales comparison in the different years. So how is this month compared to others, and by type of sales. And then I can see all the way down to the individual sales item and then the product categories within that individual sales item. To show that I can drill down even to a level deeper here, let me just click on one of the orders. So this is going to go out, execute another report. Okay, this time I'm going to see the sales order report. Again, this is going to take just a second before it actually goes out there and attempts to connect to the SQL Server. Once it connects to the SQL Server, it will then execute this report and allow me to drill down inside of that individual report. There we go. Takes it just a second. Now we've hit the SQL Server, and you can see it returns pretty quickly. So now I can see the individual sales order number here, SO58903, and see the individual items, unit price, all the way down to seeing the grand total and how much discount we gave on that individual item. So it allows me to drill down from a total overall sales perspective down to an individual sales order from one customer and that sales rep and how the customer did. So let's back up a little bit here and get back to that main report. Let me drill down and look inside. If I click on that was clicking on the person's name. Notice I can also click on the bar over here, and it will go out and access the same report, but this time it'll do a sales comparison chart. And a little bit of delay here in this report running. Again, I haven't actually accessed the SQL Server at this point, but I will in just a second when it attempts to access. There we go. And now that report has been generated for me, so I can see comparison information and December sales comparison for that individual user. Notice some of the other detail that I've got back on this main screen. I have a drop-down box here, or little control arrows next to the sales and employee name. If I want to, on the fly, sort this information, so you can see right now it's from highest to lowest, but if I click the little up arrow here, it's going to reverse the order and sort the employees in total sales from top to bottom. It's going to take a second for that to run, but I could also, as you see, we have next to the employee name, if I wanted to sort it alphabetically there, that it finally executed. Okay, so now I'm going from lowest sales to highest sales, and it has modified my chart as well for the sales for the by employee. Next, let's take a look. This is, notice the navigation bars I have here at the top. The default settings I had set up for this report are bikes with subcategories, and you can see the list of subcategories, just road bikes, and for the entire sales year of 2003. What happens if I want to change that information? I could go over here to bikes. Instead of bikes, I want to see how people did in clothing sales. Now, obviously, my list of subcategories is going to change when I go to the clothing category. So we'll give it just a second here to refresh my subcategories, and I'll pick just a subset of the subcategories that I've got. And from within that subcategory, I'm going to be able to pick which items I want to show in the sales reports. Let's do jerseys, shorts, and socks. So you can see all the user interfaces built in for doing a subset of the information that I want here. Before I click on View Report, let's manipulate the date. I don't want to see the whole year for clothing. I just want to know how did we do in clothing, let's say, I don't know, for the first half of the year. So I'll go to July 1st. So here I've changed the category, picked certain parts of the subcategories, and all done with the end date so I can change just to see half the year. Clicked on View the Report here. This allows the user to select the data that they want to look at. Did I have to write a bunch of code to be able to add this user interface? No. With the report builder, I was able to define the categories that are displayed at the top as well as the date ranges, and allowing the end user to have a very different experience. I don't assume things for them. I allow them to input fields, and then now they can see the report has come up and showing me some of the different things. There we're looking at by employee again and top stores. And this is information, again, just for the clothing category in the first 6 months of the year. I can also print this straight from here. Okay, notice because my screen's a little bit smaller, it's wrapped it around here, but if I click onto the print screen, print button, it will send it out to my printer. Notice it's going to, the first time, it's going to want me to install a little ActiveX control to allow me to download and do that. Once I do this the very first time, that will not be required anymore. So that's just a first time install. I click on the preview button of printing, and I can control things such as the margins. So I can come here and change my bottom margin to a little bit lower than what the standards are. And notice that changes and brings my bottom margin up a little bit, and I can scroll through the couple of pages of how that report would look. Okay, so I could go straight out to the printer at that point. All right, next, let's take a look at what happens if I wanted to export that information. Okay. Let's go back up to my AdventureWorks sample reports, and instead of working with that product line sales report, let's take a look at the company sales report. So over here is another sample one. Again, all the demos that I'm doing today come straight from the SQL Server sample database AdventureWorks. So I click on company sales, and it's going to go out and run the company sales report for me. Notice the inputs are a little bit different on this report than the previous one. I'll give this just a second for it to run here. Once this report opens up, I'll be able to expand the columns and drill down. There we go. So here's AdventureWorks sales for 2002, 2003. And you can see on the left-hand side, I've got my categories again. So I'm going to expand my components field and look at it. So now notice I've got my different components that I sell. And this is total for 2002 and 2003. So if I click on the plus sign, this allows me to drill down even further. So now I can see my sales by quarter, by component, and continue to expand the information out. Very nice. I'd like to be able to manipulate this in another format. So notice in the Select Format button here, the different formats that I can export the information out to. And I'm going to select Excel at the bottom and tell it to export that information. When I export it, it's going to open up another window here. And yes, I want to open this up inside of Excel. Okay, so I'm just launching a web browser view of Excel here. So you can see how it exported the information out for me and into a sales format, but again, in Excel so I can do manipulation of it. Notice the control bars up here at the top. I can collapse and expand different levels. So if I want to collapse the years down on the left-hand side, I can do that. And if I want to collapse them here on this side, I can do that. So all inside Excel, and notice how nicely it put in the wallpaper here for me. Excuse me. I can expand this information back out and work with it, manipulate it all inside of Excel. So it doesn't just have to be in a flat file format or a printed format. I can take the data that we create through the reporting capabilities and export this out to Excel and then manipulate it once we get to it to the Excel format. All right, let's go ahead and close Excel. We're all done with that one. And let's go ahead and minimize this interface to Explorer. And I'm going to open up another Internet Explorer window. Now this is the one that to me gets the real power of reporting services. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I opened up a window. There we go. Didn't double click on it, just single clicked on it. So once I open up Internet Explorer, I'm just going to point it to my local host here. So this is going to point back just to my own machine. And I want to look at that local host. Right? And notice when localhost comes up, I'm getting SharePoint services. So I am running on this machine Windows SharePoint services. And what I want to demonstrate in this part is how Report Server can be a component and added to SharePoint services. So as part of this demonstration, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and add Report Explorer and Report Viewer as web parts to my SharePoint system here. Okay, so the first thing to do this, and it's kind of fun to watch how they do this, I want to modify the shared page. Okay, and I want to modify my shared web parts. Okay, and I want to add a web part. So let's do that. Let's add a web part, and I want to click on Browse. So what kind of web part do I want to add? will take just a second for this to load, bring me up all the different components of SharePoint that I could add in. Okay, so this is, again, the standard SharePoint team site that I've got here, and I want to add in the virtual server gallery. So we're going to look, and so part of virtual server has included Report Explorer for me and Report Viewer. The first web part that we want to add is Report Explorer. So I click on Report Explorer. Where do I want to add it? I want to add it to the left component here. So I click on the Add button. And that's going to add in the middle of my SharePoint website a window called Report Viewer, Report Explorer. There we go. We see it right in the middle. Next is I want to add the Report Viewer. So to show you another interface, a way to do this is I click on the Report Viewer, and I could also click on Add here, but I want to control exactly where this one does. So if I click and drag Report Viewer and bring it over here, and I want it to squeeze right in between Report Explorer and my announcements. So you see that dark blue bar that comes up? Kind of a heavy blue bar. If that's right where I want it, that's where it's going to land. So I let go of it over there, and this should rearrange my SharePoint site. There it does. So now I have the announcements and events are kind of at the bottom here, but above that I've created Report Explorer and Report Viewer. Okay. So now let's customize the way that these were going to work. So if I do the drop-down box inside of Report Explorer, and I want to modify that shared web part, one of the first things that comes up over here in the right-hand side of things is the URL that I want to for this web part. So I'm going to point it back to this individual machine with using the localhost reports folder. So there's my URL, http://localhost reports. Click OK there, and that's going to point Report Explorer back to the appropriate place. Notice once that gets pointed to the right place, I get this additional icon added to the desktop called, or actually to the home page called Report Builder. I'll go in and demonstrate Report Builder a little bit later. But notice here's my VentureWorks sample reports. Once I click on that, it's going to show me a list of, and I've kind of got a small window here, so you have to scroll down with me. But you can see the sample reports that we saw in that previous interface. If we click on company sales just to show you that the report does work within that. And this will take just a second for it to execute. Opens up another Explorer window for me, and the report's being run all with the web interface. And you see the same exact report we saw previously. All right, so I'm not going to take the time to drill through that again. So let's go back and modify this SharePoint site some more. All right, so next, excuse me, I'm going to look at the Report Explorer web part, and we want to modify this web part some more. So I click on the down button again and modify the web part. And this time in my connections configuration, I want to make sure that I've got everything I've got the way I want it to connect. So in the Report Explorer web part, so I'm over here in Report Explorer. I want to click my down arrow and make sure that I, excuse me, my little sore throat today, so apologize for that. I want to make sure that I get Report Explorer property pane to drop up here. And I want them to show up in the report viewer, so I have to point my connections and make sure that my down arrow is dropping here. It's not quite going to full screen for me here, so I'm going to have to scroll over to this. Let's see if I'm going to be able to find that configuration. And I'm not showing that, so let's see where the connections setting is going to go here. Let's go ahead and come back and try that step one more time. Modify that. Now let's try to see if we can do the drop-down box here. There we go. Helps if I find the right drop-down box. So I want to go to my connections and show reports in, and I want to make sure that it's set to Report Viewer. And click OK there. And now in the Report Viewer, I need to modify it. Okay. And I want to modify the web part there. And I want to expand our appearance here. And let's make sure that everything is going on our correct. I don't want this window to be too big here, so I want to make my height to 500 pixels and set that so we'll have scrolling capabilities inside this. No, I don't care about autocomplete. There we go. Now it's looking the way it should. Okay. So now inside of my Report Explorer, if I click on the Advance Your Work Sample Reports, and I want to work with Employee Sales Summary. There's our Employee Sales Summary. And as I execute that report, notice that report is now going to come down here in our Report Viewer. It's going to take it just a second to run here. There we go. All right, so I've got to scroll down so I can kind of see everything that's going on here. But notice in the Report Viewer window, I've got a month, date range, year, and I can pick which employee I want to run this report on. It's going to be kind of hard to see, but I got to scroll to the right here a little bit to see everything that's going on. So once I've picked that employee, I'm now going to view the report. And it's going to take it a second to generate this report for us. And it will return it all to inside my SharePoint window here. So there is my December 2003 sales report for Amy. And I could drill down inside that information, or I could click on the print icon here, or I could export it out to all different types of formats that I want. Okay, so that's creating a SharePoint site using these report services and adding in the web parts, Report Explorer and Report Viewer. All right, so let's go back to the slides here. I hope there weren't too many questions on that demonstration. You're able to follow all the way through that. Where did we leave off on the slide? So in that demonstration, we looked at the Report Viewer as reporting services as an end user. We looked at what the end user might see inside of a report created with Report. We also looked at the sort features as an end user and creating it inside of SharePoint services. So next, let's take a look at creating and publishing reports and our tools that we have for creating those. There's a life cycle to creating reports. SQL Server Reporting Services supports a full reporting life cycle, including creating, publishing, and management and delivery of all reports. Creating reports is all about defining what's in your report: the data sources, the queries, the filters, the grouping, the aggregation, the sorting, the layout, the look and feel. Publishing or deploying a report stores it in the reporting services databases and makes it available to a wider audience than just the IT pro that's creating it. Report Designer is a more robust Visual Studio integrated tool for IT professionals and developers. In both cases, the reports are defined by using the report definition language, a documented XML format. These files then have an RDL extension. You can also build your own reports using tools on top of this XML format. The key is that the report format is open and documented, making it easy to integrate reports and build or use third-party tools with your reporting capabilities. All right, so let's go take a look back to demonstration here. I told you I wouldn't spend much time in the slides. In this one, we're going to take a look at using Report Builder to create a report, running the report, and adding some filters to that. Let's go back over to our demonstration environment. So here's where we left off with our web part. Okay. And so in our Report Explorer web part, we want to click on, and we've got to scroll up so we see it all here. Remember that icon that was created, Report Builder? Okay, so I'm going to click on that icon. It's going to give me a security warning wanting them to know if I want to run this application or not, which is a good security check. This is a click once application. Always check to see if you have the latest version cached in your machine. When you first try to launch Report Builder, when you update a version is available, you'll be prompted by a security dialog box just like this one. And yes, I want to download the latest one, so you can see it quickly just copied 5 meg of data down to my machine because it's the first time I've run it on this machine. So it's going to take it just a second to open it up here. You saw it flash right quick, okay? But we'll get the Report Builder going here in just a second. It's starting to come up now. So you can see the interface in here with the Getting Started pane. And I want to expand my AdventureWorks. And there's different radio buttons here. I could create a report in a tabular format, matrix, or chart fashion. As well, I also have some links under the Open directory. All right. And let me full screen this so we can get all the way down. Yep, let's go ahead and click OK there. And this brings up the designer. So here you've got this blank format to build a report. Okay, so if you've ever worked with report designers before, this probably looks pretty familiar. If you've got a white paper and your challenge is what do you want to put on this columns, rows and columns of data, and how to total that data and how to present it in a fashion that your users will really like the interface of the reporting capabilities. So let's drive it a little bit. Let's take it for a test drive and see what it's like to do. So once I've got started here, the report one window opens up, and so here I can click on adding a title to it. I can drag and drop columns over here, do some totals, and any type of filter that I want to set up on it. On the left-hand side, we've got what's called the Explorer pane. And these are the different entities, okay, that I have in my database and the information that I have. For example, in the customers, notice I've got aggregations here for total number of customers, number of stores, contact ID information about the customers that come from that table, as well as the style of name that that user has. Let's then look at modified date. I can then see who modified that data and last time the information was touched in that field. So I could aggregate money based upon, or aggregate fields based upon when that record was last modified. So let's take a look and create us a sample report. First thing I want to do is look at the sales territory. So I'm going to create a report by salesperson. Now I could do this a couple of different ways. I could either start with report details, that is the salespeople information, or the report grouping by territory. We'll start with the latter by simply double-clicking the sales territory entity. So once I double-click this, watch what happens. Again, this is a one-click touch. Once I double-click sales territory, it takes over the most common fields that it thinks I would want to use. Now, I don't really want all these, but the first thing I want is sales territory. So I'm going to divide the data by sales territory. Keep in mind that at this point the report is focused on sales territory data. You can't add another table. The only way is to go back to the master list and then add those down. But what we're going to do is I'm going to add salespeople. Where we're talking about the salespeople, so their roles. So I want to first just click on the salespeople. And again, this is inside of my entities here. And I want to grab first name, middle name, and last name. To grab a group of them, I just shift key and get all three of the fields here. And I can drag all three of those fields out here, and notice I can put them right on the reporting desktop. I want to land them right next to the sales. So as I bring it close to the sales, notice the heavy blue bar that's added, and it just added those three fields to our report. Okay, now I don't need all of those fields, so let's get rid of sales year to date, and let's also get rid of sales last year. Okay. I don't think I need either of those. Let's get rid of those. So now I have a report that's called territory, first name, middle name, and last name of all of my salespeople. And I need to add some sales orders here. So let's click on the sales order field. And that brings up a list of different fields that I can add. So the first one I want is the number of sales orders. Let's take that field and drag it and drop it over here to the right. Okay, so you can see I'm redefining my report here. And also I need a sum total due. So let's take a look, and that's going to summarize the total order for me. And if I put it in the right position here, before I drag it, I got to scroll over to where I want it to land. So let's scroll correctly here. Bear with me here. I did it out of sequence. And it quite doesn't. There we go. So now I'm going to take the sum total due and add it next to the total sales. There, got all the columns that I need for my report. Okay, notice the totaling capabilities here. All right, this will automatically total different things for us, which will take into account the different aggregate fields here. Notice it's not trying to total the last names or first names for us. It knows that those aren't addable. Okay, so I want to modify this total field and get it to pick up the fields that I want to. Let's see if I shift and click over here and here. There, I've got my total column field collected. So if I go up and make the different changes that I want, let's make it bold so that information stands out. Oh, let's click on our font, and what should we do to our font? Oh, let's see if we can change the color of that. Oh, I don't know. I'll make my totals blue. How about that? There we go. So now I'm folding and making them blue. And if I click on the right edge here, got to click it just right, I can expand this out just a little bit so it fits the total page. There we go. So that'll snap to the grid. And next, all I need to do is add a title. So I'm going to click on the Add the Title section, and I'll call it My Salespeople. If I can type here, there we go. My Salespeople is the name of the report that we want. And so next, we're going to click on Run the Report. So how hard was that? I went and grabbed fields from 3 different tables, glued them together, made the appropriate relationships that it knew, and created the custom controls on the interface. So this should generate us a report here in just a second. There we go. All right, so notice the first thing is we've got My Salespeople. Territory, first name, middle name, last name, sales orders, sum of total due. So by territory, my information is sorted here, giving me totals by territory and then a grand total at the bottom, giving me all 17 people. So notice in my Northwest territory, how many sales reps did we have? Not Northeast, but let's go down a little bit more. There in Northwest, we had 3 different people. And notice, for example, within Northwest, there's David Campbell, had 189 sales orders, just for over $5 million in sales. And if I click that 189, it should go out here and generate another report for us. Allowing me to drill down and see inside of that 189 reports. Let's see if this is going to work or not. There we go. And so now we see inside of David Campbell's reports, here's all the individual orders that make up that $5 million in sales that we got. So I could drill down inside of an individual order of his and look at the detail of that individual report. What allows me to do these capabilities is behind the scenes. Okay, I could have an OLAP cube that supports all this data so I could see summary information as well as the drill down information. So let's look and see if we can create some ways to create filters on this. So if I go up here and click on Design Report, so I want it to stop running, and I want to click on the filter. So let's design some filters here. In our entities list over here on the left-hand side, I want to click on Sales Orders. So click on the Sales Order button and expand my order date. Okay, so order date here, notice, has a lot of different fields on it. Click and drag my order year to the right pane. So I'm going to take my year and drag it and drop it out here. So salespeople with order year equals to, and so right now it's unspecified, so I'm going to specify 2002. And order date, I want also to have month. So again, I need to expand order date and take order month and drag it out here to the right-hand pane. So notice it does an anding pause. I could change that to or, however I want my Boolean math to work. So here in the order month, I'm going to unspecified. I could specify a specific month if I wanted to do that. Here's a really cool feature. I just love this. Notice the equals button here. So order month equals, what is that? What happens if I want to list a month? So if I click on the equals button, instead of equals, I want to pick it from a list. Okay, so notice in this list, now that I click on the no specified values, I can specify, oh, let's do January, February, March. So notice it knows that there are 12 possible values per month. So I'm going to pick on it and have it do 1, 2, 3. So click OK to that. And now run that report again. So instead of seeing the entire year, all the data that's out there, we've created a subfilter that I want to see just the first 3 months of the year 2002. Give it a second for it to run here. There we go. So notice now I'm seeing just that information that I needed. Notice it's the same format, but I'm seeing just a subset of it. If I go to the design report, let's go back to our design surface. Take it just a second here. There we go. Didn't click it all the way. So now if I go to on the filter design surface, and I got to be in the filter, sorry, and make sure that the order month, and click on the prompt button. When I click prompt, and now click OK, and run that report again. Okay. Notice one of the things that I can do here is it created a prompt up here. So instead of doing the 1, 2, 3 and have to go back and rewrite my code every time, when I click the report and tell it to prompt, I can then, let's say if I want to look at second quarter, okay, now that I've run the report for first quarter, show me the same data for the second quarter, click on view report, and now I've given all the power to the end users to allow them to be able to create the report, modify the date range that they want to do. Was there any coding that I had to do behind the scenes? No. So there you see is the same report. Instead of off the first quarter, it's off the second quarter data. So now that we've got that, I want to go up here and say File, Save. So I want to save the report that I just created, and we'll call this one My New Report. And save that. And let's go ahead and minimize that interface. Let's go back to Report Manager here. And notice once Report Manager comes up that that report that we just created should be available to other users. So as Report Manager comes up, I've already got it opened here once. So now if I go to my Venture Sample Works, and if I scroll down, let's do a refresh here. Nope, it didn't show up. Let's try that again. There, I put My New Report instead of under my samples. It's right here under the root. Okay, so I didn't save it down in the right level, but that'll work. Okay, so you can see it, and I can run that report straight from here. And that same report executes. All right, if I can go to the properties of that report. Nope, if I go back a page, sorry, I got to have this highlighted and go to the properties. Because I saved it the wrong level, that's not going to work. But if I had put this down in the appropriate level inside of my sample reports, and you click on the Properties tab here, this allows you to word all these descriptions that come in place. Okay, it allows me to be able to show all the details about that description. But because I saved it up in the proper folder, it's not going to let me edit those. But you get the idea where I could put the description for that report in the appropriate place. All right, so let's go back to our slides for a couple more slides here. And again, in that demonstration, what did we take a look at? We looked at the report builder to create a report. We ran the report and then added the filter so you can show how the user interaction works with the reports. So next, let's talk about the differences between report builder versus report designer. Report designer is in SQL 2000 reporting services, so most of you are probably familiar with that. In this next demonstration, we'll learn about the key features of report designer. Here, let's take a look at the summary of the main differences between Report Builder and Report Designer. Report Builder is designed for the non-technical business users, where Designer is for IT pros and developers. Report Builder excels at ad hoc reporting, while Report Designer is best for carefully designed reports that you'll manage through the report lifecycle. Report Builder uses report models to automatically generate the underlying queries, while Report Designer uses a variety of native queries and is fully integrated with ADO.NET. Report Builder is limited to 3 predefined templates. Report Designer is completely free-form, allowing you to design any of the report. You may want to use different report items from the toolbox. As we saw, Report Builder is a click-once deploy application. End users are not required to install anything, especially SQL Server Business Intelligence Development Studio or BID. Report Designer is more complex and requires this Business Intelligence Studio. And finally, Report Builder cannot import reports built in Report Designer, but Report Designer can open and fully edit Report Builder reports. Let's take a look at how designing and publishing reports from a developer's perspective. So we're going to go back for our last demonstration here. We only have a few more minutes left in our hour, but in this demonstration we'll take a look at creating a report from a developer's perspective. We may not get all the way through this one, but let's see how long we can dive into this demonstration. All right, so back to our test environment here. Let me close down some of those windows, and we want to open up our Business Intelligence Design Studio. So SQL Server Business Intelligence Studio. When we launch this up, we're going to create a new report. Okay, I need to size my Solution Explorer here in just a second once this loads. So this is, as you can see, is Visual Studio 2005. And if I maximize that window, everything is continuing to launch here. I want to go up to File, New, and we're going to create a new project. So I could have also done Control-Shift-N. The new project dialog box opens. And I've got lots of different templates here. Okay. First one I want to do is Report Server Project. Okay, so notice there's Report Server Project Wizard. I'm not going to do that one. You could do that if this is the first time that you're going through it. But let's go to Report Server Project. And I'm just going to call it Report 1. So that'll be a default one that's out there. So click OK there. It's going to open up this new project in Visual Studio. In my Solution Explorer pane on the right-hand side here, I need a new shared data source. So if I right mouse click on this and create a new data source, and let's see the name of my data source, I want a Microsoft SQL Server Analysis Server. So I'll make sure instead of this SQL Server, I'm going to connect to my Analysis Server. And if I click on the edit here, it should go out there and create things. So on my connection, and again, I'm running everything on my local host. So if I just type in localhost for my server name and pick up the appropriate database here, and I want the AdventureWorks Data Warehouse. Okay, and that looks good. So I'm connected to my data warehouse. So now I want to create a new report. So my right mouse click, and I want to create add a new item into this project, and it's going to be a report. So under my templates here, I want to do, again, I could do Report Wizard, but we're just going to do a straight report. Notice the name here, it's going to call it Report 1. I can give it any name that I want, but it's going to store it out as an RDL format. So I click on Add there. And the first thing I want to do is point it to my new data set. So I'm going to do a drop-down box here and create a new data set. And in my data set dialog box, I want to go to Data Source. Okay, but I just want to make sure that that is there. I'm not actually going to create a new data source at this point. Let's see. If I just create a Data Source 1, there we go. We'll come back and edit that in just a second. This is going to force an open of the MDX Query Designer. Okay, so now I'm going to give the chance to be able to access these OLAP cubes or the data warehousing that I've got set up. So inside of this, I'm going to point to AdventureWorks. That's my data warehouse that we've got. I'm going to click on the little Browse button here. And notice that gives me a chance to look at all the cubes that are available out of my meta browser. So here I want to expand my measures. And if you're not familiar with what a measure is, that is the attributes of our data warehouse. And I want to expand reseller sales. So if I go down to reseller sales, there we go. So I can see all the different information. And I want to take reseller sales amount. So I got to scroll down here and find that retail sales seller amount. And I'm going to drag that over to my design service and put it right here in the middle. And it's going to start building the cube for me. So now I want to look at my reseller total production cost. Drag it over here and put it in the next column. And let's collapse measures because I've got enough measures. Now I want to expand my product cube. So find product and expand that. And I want to find category, click that, and drop that to the left of reseller sales amount. So it's going to be kind of in the middle here. Let's see if I can get it to go right where we want it. There we go. That's all I need out of product. And so now let's look at sales territory. This does take a little bit of time here, so I apologize if we may run over a few minutes. But in sales territory group, okay, notice I can grab that and place it to the right of my category here. There we go. So I'm starting to get all the information that I need. That's all we need out of sales territory. And now let's do some date calendar functions. So when I expand my date, look at calendar. And I'm going to put calendar up into this top window here. Let's see if I can expand it correctly. Inside of calendar, there we go. Date calendar year. I don't need that one. I need this one right here. And take that and drag it up to this dimension array. And we're good to go. And now I need to look in the first row and make sure that I get everything that I want in the appropriate place. So I need to expand this out a little bit. So if I resurface my Surface Explorer, I can see the different hierarchy here. I should have a drop-down filter under my filter menu. There we go, under the hierarchy. And I can select the different fields there. And under my filter expression, click into this blank field. And under all periods, I can select, and I want to do calendar year 2002. And make sure that my parameters checkbox is selected, and it is. Okay, and now if I come up here and point to my data set ellipse, okay, oops, wrong ellipse there, click on this one, I can see the code that we just wrote. Okay, so I could have done exactly what we just did, or I could have written this select statement if you're more of a developer than I am. Okay, so again, it's writing the code behind the scenes. If you want to see that, you can do that. So next, let's take a look at the Layout tab. Okay, so here it brings up the Design Surface. Far left-hand side, I've got my Toolbox. And in our Toolbox, I want to open up the Report Items group. Okay, so there are my report items. And I'm going to grab a table and drop it onto my surface. Okay, so now I've got in my design surface what I'm going to build. And under my view, I want to make sure that I have my data sets correctly. So let's go to View, Data Sets. There we go, all the way at the bottom. And so I now can have my data sets here on the left-hand side of my surface. So I'm going to expand data set 1. That's what we built earlier. So from the category, I'm going to grab category and drag it. Let's see, where do I want? Under the detail column and second row here. So notice it's not a header or a footer. I want it in the detail. And I'm going to grab retail sales amount and do the same and put that in my second column here so you can see the kind of touch and look and feel of designing a report looks like. And finally, I want my reseller total production cost that we got, that last column, and put it in the third row here. So now I want to insert a new column. All right, so if I come back over here to the left-hand side, you see this little icon with the 3 bars in the middle? If I click on that, okay, it's going to allow me, I need to size things down before I do that. Let me, bear with me, I forgot to do this step. So if I make these a little bit smaller, because I'm going to run out of design space if we're not too careful here. And make sure we resize these down so we got enough row space, if you will, here. But if I click on the little horizontal bars, and I want to insert a group. There we go. It's going to say, what group do you want to insert? So I'm going to the grouped and sorting dialog box in the group on pane. Okay, so I want to make sure I group on here. I've got a drop-down box, and I want to find fields, and I want to pick up sales territory group value. There we go. So what field do I want to include? Click OK, and it's going to insert that to the left-hand side there for me. And if I highlight the gray margin area here and right mouse click here, and I want to insert a column to the left, notice it moves everything over for me. And now this sales territory group that we just created, I can now place into this field. There we go. And for my data sets, I want to show aggregated value, so I want to add these items together. So I want to total up the sales amount and production sales value. So to do that, I need to grab this reseller sales amount and put it right below the sales amount header. There we go. Oh, wrong field. Let's undo that. That should have gone, resale sales amount should have gone here. There we go. And the resale total production goes here. All right. So notice those are the summing values. Notice it put the word sum in for me automatically in those. And so if I right mouse click and look at the properties of that or look at the expression, there's the actual code that it's writing for me. Okay, now notice that we've got IntelliSense here. For you developers, I can backspace and notice it's going to automatically IntelliSense for me. Okay, and if I backspace a couple of times, I can see where it's automatically trying to help me finish out this word. So if I try the E, it says, yes, you really meant value, and close that back parentheses back up. Okay. I also could do all kinds of different functions here, but again, I'm not going to get in too deep into developer since I am running out of time. Let's see if there's anything else. I could change colors here. And so if I highlight one of these columns and go to right mouse click and go to font, I could change all the properties of this column. Okay, again, I can go to all the different sorting, background colors, styles. Again, because I'm running out of time, going to skip that section of the properties. But let's start debugging, or let's look in the preview tab right quick to see what it would look like. So notice it's going to go through, build the report, no errors, no compiling problems, and then here's a sample of what that report would look like from my designer here. All right, wish I had more time. We'd go into a lot more detail here, but I want to kind of keep it to our promised time frame of doing this under an hour. So let me go back to our slides here, and we'll leave a few minutes, see if we can answer some of these questions. All right, but before, again, I get to those, let's just finish this up. And that one, we saw as a developer, ways to use the reporting services to build a new project, create a report using the report layout, preview that report. And the final step I didn't have time to get to there, but what would have done next was to publish that report and making it available to all of our end users. So the last couple of slides here, the last phase of our life cycle is to be able to deliver these reports. So in the demonstrations, you saw how an end user can have on-demand access via a web-based report manager or SharePoint. These are all known as pull methods. Pull method allows the user to run reporting services by manually requesting the information. There's also another way to deliver reports. This is known as a push model. Okay. In a push model, once the report is stored, the whole set of management report operations you can then be performed. For example, you can change where the data comes from by changing the connection string. You can also change the parameter reporting, the security settings, who can see what, and what rights do they have. To do this, you can also use a web-based report managing tool that we saw earlier, or you can use a Windows-based tool inside of SQL Server Management Studio. So it allows me to be able to publish these reports out and control how they're executed in a push environment and push those reports out to the clients. So in the last hour, we've taken a look at the core enhancements, better integration of SQL Server 2005 reporting services, allowed us to take a look at the ad hoc reporting capability of Report Builder, and we did a very brief look at Visual Studio Report support and how Report Viewer works in that environment. For more information about this services, go to Microsoft.com/TechNet, and you can look at specifically under SQL Server for more information about SQL Server reporting capabilities. So now it's time, if you got any questions, you can click on the Ask button, and I'll turn it over to Janet for a couple of minutes while I go start looking at the questions that are there. I see that Brian Von Axelson's been behind the scenes answering some of them, but let me go see if there are any left in the queue.
Excellent. Well, thanks, John. So if you have any additional questions for him, go ahead and submit them now. You can hit that Ask button in the lower right-hand corner, and we'll get to those in a moment here. I want to point out that we do record all of our webcasts, so you can watch your inbox tomorrow. I'll have email with information about viewing the webcast on demand. You'll be able to download it as a Windows media file, and that email will also include a link to the downloadable PowerPoint of today's webcast. If you'd like to see any of our previously recorded webcasts, plus anything that's coming up, they're all posted right there at Microsoft.com/webcast. So you'll be able to see everything there. So if you have any content ideas or anything that you'd like to see us do differently on these webcasts, let us know. There's a link here where you can contact us. And I just want to point out that today's webcast was presented using the Microsoft Office Live Meeting technology. So there's currently a free 14-day trial. Just go to Microsoft.com/presentlive. So we have that survey coming up here that John mentioned. I just want to point out, filling out that survey, you're going to be entered into a drawing to win this 30-gigabyte video. It's an MP3 Windows Media Player, so be able to do that through July of 2006, so this month only. And just want to point that out. Great little giveaway item there. So your feedback is valuable, but there's that incentive as well. So take a moment to fill out this survey before you log out. We do appreciate that. And John, any questions you want to go through?
Looks like Brian had handled almost all of them behind the scenes. Still got a few more coming in. One of the ones that just came in was what class or webcast would you recommend the continuing coverage of the designer and deployment components? We are working on the next series of these webcasts for this. This was just the introduction level, level 200, to introduce you to reporting services. I tentatively have another webcast that's an advanced level on reporting services, a level 300 course that we're trying to get scheduled later this month. So continue to check back at Microsoft.com/webcast. Hopefully we'll get that one out in the July schedule. If not, if it doesn't make it in July, I hope to get that webcast in August. But if you want, can email me at jweston@microsoft.com, or go check out my blog at blogs.technet.com/jweston, and I'll have further information about the ongoing follow-ons to this introduction course. So that's about it, Janet, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Excellent. Well, I'll just remind everybody once again, please do take a moment. Your feedback is valuable to us, so take the moment to fill out that survey before you log out. And I'd just like to extend a special thanks to John for today's presentation. I'd also like to thank Brian Van Axelson in the background there for helping out with some of those questions as well. So that concludes this TechNet Live meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. And our audience may now disconnect from the audio portion of this event.